Hello, fellow Star Wars fans. My name is Starrapter. I've been waiting for this review for a long time because I can now say I can fully review Star Wars The Clone Wars, the 2008 animated series. It got kicked off back in 2008 after the film launched things. The really significant thing about The Clone Wars, first and foremost, is it is the last intellectual property in Star Wars that George Lucas had a hand in creating, and he had since left things off with his Padawan, as you might say, Dave Filoni. Yes, this is where Dave Filoni started his very awesome career in Star Wars with the Clone Wars. So what is the Clone Wars? Well, we can go back to 1977 when Ben Kenobi is talking to Luke Skywalker in his hut on Tatooine, and he mentions the Clone Wars. And this is what this entire series is about. We get a little bit of the Clone Wars in Revenge of the Sith, and we see the start of the Clone Wars in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. So this series really takes place in that 3-year period between the Attack of the Clones movie and Revenge of the Sith. And the way that this series is formatted is it's basically an anthology series, right? So you're going to jump around a little bit. You're going to focus on a character here, a character there, but what really they focus on are these main characters of the prequels. You have Obi-Wan Kenobi, you have Anakin Skywalker, you have Padme, you have Yoda. Pretty much every background character you've seen in Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith has some kind of feature within this series. And what's really great about the Clone Wars is it really enhances these characters beyond expectations, right? A lot of people had problems with Anakin Skywalker in his portrayal in Attack of the Clones and in Revenge of the Sith, and his fall to the dark side was very fast for a lot of people. You watch the Clone Wars, and man, it really explores different facets of Anakin's personality. And the same could be said for, Padme. Padme didn't have a whole lot to do in the prequels a lot of the times, but it really shows her courage and her bravery and the stuff that's going on in the Senate. And Obi-Wan, of course, there's lots of awesome details that you would never expect from Obi-Wan Kenobi revealed in this series. And it's not just the characters we already knew from the movies, but the Clone Wars introduces some of the best characters, not just animation, but in Star Wars as a whole. You might have heard of a character named Ahsoka Tano. Yes, this is where she is introduced in Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and she has one of the best arcs in all of Star Wars, in my opinion, where she starts off in the Clone Wars series, and she ends up at the end of the series such development on a scale that we've really never seen before in Star Wars. And it's called the Clone Wars, and we have to learn about the clones, right? We go through the lens, we see through the lens of the clone Captain Rex. That's right, Captain Rex. We see through his eyes of what the clones are experiencing. And the clones are so crucial to the success of the Clone Wars, and to see that they actually have personalities. And this is one of the best things about the Clone Wars, in my opinion, is to see how they are dealing with things, their individuality, their personality, how they are getting along with the Jedi, and everything seems so great until you know what's coming down the line. So to give it that much more of a tragedy feel, you get to see the greatness that is the clones and these loyal soldiers of the Republic. I do want to talk about how this series expands the universe, expands everything we know about Star Wars, and introduces the mythos of the Force like we haven't seen it before. And I mean, it'll expand things in your mind about the Force that you never expected, giving you so much more detail into how this works. It's absolutely phenomenal on how they actually managed to get this to work. Again, George Lucas was helping with creating the series. A lot of it's pretty much his vision. And the fact that he's able to throw any amount of money that he wanted at this series to tell it how he wanted to tell it. He did not treat this series like it was just another TV series. He treated it like it was a movie. And that's what his instructions were to the crew was, treat this like a movie. Hey, that was hard to accomplish. I got something even more difficult for you guys to accomplish. And that's why it's an Emmy Award winning show. You look at the legacy of the Clone Wars, look at the very first episode, then look at the Siege of Mandalore, which is the very last arc of this series. And it is a drastic change, and it's so nice to see that the crew and the actors were able to really step up their game, repeatedly throughout the whole 12-year span that this show was on the air. Now, the genres of this series is what really makes it awesome. And I love how George Lucas really experimented. Yeah, it's called the Clone Wars, and there's plenty of wars, don't get me wrong. There's lots of World War II inspired drop zone moments and whatnot, but then we also get like really cool horror vibes in Star Wars that we haven't seen before. We have things with just droids and nothing else. We have episodes that are underwater. We have episodes that just deal with height. Like, just so many facets and genres that are explored in this series that really makes it entertaining. The great thing is, hey, if you didn't like that arc, then you can worry about another arc, because again, like I mentioned before, it's told in arcs, so you might have a bunch, 3 or 4 episodes telling a story, then it's going to go to the other side of the galaxy, tell 3 or 4 episodes of another story. And I feel like that was a great way to tackle the Clone Wars as such a huge conflict that has ramifications not in those 3 years, but for years and decades later. And to show the wide berth of how the people are affected. You see how the Jedi affect the citizens. You see how the Republic, the soldiers, and from the Separatist point of view, right? You have heroes on both sides of the war, as they say in Revenge of the Sith Crawl. And that can't be more meaningful than in the Clone Wars. Seeing characters on both sides, seeing the motivations, everything about that. Plus, it's backed by the cinematic quality that we really haven't seen before in animation. Granted, I haven't seen a lot of animation, but I will say from what I've seen in the beginning of the series and see towards the end, they really outdid themselves with this. And I cannot mention the Clone Wars without the music. And the music, Kevin Kiner, this guy needs to do music for a Star Wars movie at some point, or a live action television series on Disney Plus or something, because the way he's able to write new themes and more motifs for characters like Ahsoka, but then blend in things like Across the Stars and various other really unique experimental music in Star Wars that is something so far-fetched that you wouldn't expect, but it really, really does add a little bit of flavor to Star Wars The Clone Wars. And with all that being said, the only negative I could really give to The Clone Wars is that, at least in the first couple seasons, things are kind of hard to piece together, because what happens is they have episodes that take place before the Clone Wars movie, and then there's some episodes in season 3 that get like a little murky with where they are in the timeline, stuff like that. And just, 133 episodes of a series, there's going to be some stinker episodes in there. It's hard to have a legacy of 7 seasons of TV and not have a couple episodes that just didn't really rub me the right way, or they rubbed me the wrong way, I should say. So with that being said, I gotta give Star Wars The Clone Wars a score of a 9 out of 10 for the series as a whole. I will say this, if you guys are on the fence about watching the Clone Wars, watch it. If you are a fan of Star Wars and you want to dive deeper into the lore, you want to find more about the things like the Force and the Jedi and how the Republic turned into the Empire, this is the series you have to start with. And what Dave Filoni and George Lucas have done is something that is so groundbreaking, something that is adding so much more to the Star Wars galaxy, that I cannot be more thankful for everybody involved with creating Star Wars The Clone Wars. If you guys want to see all of my episode reviews of the final season, make sure you go ahead and check out those right now. I actually have my review for Season 7, the final season itself, on the channel as well. It's been really fun covering the Clone Wars in this final batch of episodes. I did not start watching the Clone Wars until it aired on Netflix, and I will give you a brief little story. The Clone Wars originally was canceled after Season 5, and when fans showed enough support online in the fandom, they ended up doing The Lost Missions, which were another 12 episodes or 13 episodes that they aired on Netflix, and that's when I first started watching it. Then, out of nowhere, about 2 or 3 years ago, they announced at Comic-Con they are bringing it back for the final season, which was amazing, because it left things off kind of abruptly in Season 5 and in Season 6, where it didn't have a lot of closure. What I will say is I'm so happy for them to just come together, Dave Filoni and his crew, one final push on Disney Plus to watch it. And that's right, you can watch the entire series on Disney Plus right now. Besides Star Wars The Clone Wars, I talk about Star Wars in other facets on the channel, such as the High Republic, video games, comics, and more. So if that sounds interesting to you guys, you can go ahead and support the channel simply by subscribing. That is going to do it for me, Starrapter. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you always. Thanks for checking out the video. Please hit that thumbs up symbol. It helps me know that I'm making content that you guys enjoy. And if you enjoyed this video, I also include 2 videos down below you guys should check out. and please consider subscribing to this channel. It helps support me and it notifies you guys of when I get new videos up on the channel. You can also contact me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Starrapter.